So on a recent episode of the Fat Boy Joy podcast, I made mention of me not knowing how to be a man and in my becoming a man damaging a lot of individuals in my search of how to become a man. And I just want to elaborate on that a little bit. The fact of the matter is, we all, when we don't have an example or someone to teach us how to properly become something, we make a lot of errors along the way in hopes of figuring it out or in us trying to maneuver. And it is a lot of trial and error. But the thing that is crucial and that's most damaging is that it's not trial and error with things or objects, it's trial and error with people. Um, and and I think when it comes to men not knowing how to become a man or be a man, it defaults to toxic masculinity. And in my unprofessional opinion, based on scripture, David says, he says it simply. He's like, I was born in sin, shapen in iniquity. Our default is sinful nature. Our default is flaw. The thing that we default to. And so you have to be taught principles. You have to be taught a certain way to live, a certain way to act, a certain way to handle yourself, a certain way to carry yourself. And when you don't have that, you default to what it is that you know. And our default in human nature is sinful nature. And so we automatically produce a toxic masculinity in our striving to become a man if we don't have an example to teach us the proper way, to teach us the right way, to teach us the correct way, to teach us what a man should be or a man should become. When we don't have that, we default to toxic masculinity. And in the black culture, there are a lot of male figures that are not present to teach, to guide, to maneuver, and to teach us how to become men. And so in that, even though I had a great mom, my dad, like I said before, my dad died when I was 16, and there was no man to step up and to teach me, to guide me, to correct my errors. And the examples that I had to look on were not the best. And so in my efforts of teaching myself how to become a man, I defaulted to toxic, not defaulted. My default was to toxic masculinity, not knowing that it was toxic masculinity. It was just defaulting to that sinful nature. So I felt like I had to be with a lot of women. I felt like I could do women any kind of way. I felt like that was the thing to do or the thing to be because I didn't have an example. I didn't have someone there to teach me, no, that ain't it. This is what you do. No, that's not right. How you do that. This is how you do that. And so I think the issue with us, I can't speak for other cultures because I don't know how they default. But in human nature, our default is sinful nature. And sinful nature is missing the mark. Sin, the definition of sin is missing the mark. And so in our striving to become what it is that we think we should be when we don't have an example to teach us, we default to that sinful nature. And the automatic default of that is toxic masculinity. If we're looking at the person who said, I was born in sin and shaped in iniquity, David, the things that when he did stuff right, he did it correct. But when he fell, the Bathsheba moment, toxic masculinity. Killing her husband, toxic masculinity. Because there was no example that he had to say, hey, no, that ain't it. And then when somebody finally came to correct him and to teach him, he was like, oh no, I've been doing this wrong. And there was a lot of things that David did wrong, but that's how we are. And as men, when we don't have the proper examples, when we don't have the proper teachers, when we don't have the proper mentors, we default to toxic masculinity and we have damaged. I had to resolve with myself. I have damaged a lot of women in my search and in my efforts to teach myself, and I don't know nothing, to teach myself how to become a man.